I'm sure you've heard the idea to stop being yourself and your life will change. I never understood that concept. Not in that context. So today I want to talk about patterns and how to retrain them and how they develop and what you can do. So when someone says stop being yourself, I think what they mean is that it is your behaviors and your actions that create your results. And in your results is where you find your life. That's the life you're living. Those are your results. And our patterns are what create similar or the same results over and over. And it's difficult to get a new result if we haven't changed the pattern. The problem is that the patterns are typically unconscious. And this is where it gets tricky because if it's unconscious, it means that you're not awake to it. You don't know what it is. And so you can do all this digging and never come up with a clear understanding of what it is. What is the pattern that's creating this result? So, what do you do about that? Well, a lot of it is because it's attached to an identity. So, who you believe yourself to be is how you show up in the world. For instance, if you think you're somebody that's confident, then you show up confidently. If you think of yourself as someone that is not confident, then you will show up not confident. And you can try to show up confidently, but it usually doesn't last because you've already told yourself you're not confident. And your actions always follow your identity. So, what you have to do is yes, you're changing your self concept, but it's not so simple as just saying, hey, I'm going to show up and be somebody else. And you're never showing up as someone else. You're always showing up as yourself. But there are parts of your character that can be repressed or dormant or just underdeveloped. And that's what you have to get clear about is based on the way that you want to see yourself, the way you want to think and believe about yourself. What kind of patterns would you need to create in your life in order to believe that you are that kind of person? So that is what I want to address with you today. I want to explain to you what you can do to make that happen. Now, understand that it is a process. To shed an old self concept is not as easy as meditating and waking up and all of a sudden believing that you're Elon Musk. You're never becoming somebody else. You're always becoming more of who you already are, but you are unlocking parts of yourself that are repressed or dormant or stuck or just underdeveloped. So, if you think about it, your self concept, it's not tangible. You can't see it and you can't hold it in your hands. So, even getting clear on that is difficult because it's unconscious. Primarily, most of our identity is unconscious. So, what you have to do first is decide. The whole process of self actualization is about choosing for yourself who you are and following through with that. And so when you decide who you are, then you can get clearer on what patterns you're creating. And when I'm saying you're choosing who you are, I'm saying what do you need to further develop within yourself? So I will just give you a for instance. So one of my past patterns that kept resulting in my life is that I would do really well at work and even get promoted, but I would hit a plateau. And in that process, the person that was typically my supervisor or manager or boss or whatever that role was, they would a lot of times take the credit for my work and the progress that I would bring to the company. And after that happened over and over and over again, I stopped believing that it was because of me being in a male dominated environment. And I began believing that it was something that I was doing. So I had attributed the situation to me being a female around male domination. In my mind, I had created a story that these individuals were power hungry, egotistical, you know, just all of those narratives that you can come up with to make excuses for the results. I did not know that it was something I was doing. So, as it became clear to me, it only became clear to me because I began doing self actualization work. I had decided who I was becoming. I had decided that I wanted to be a woman that was helping other women get through situations that I had gotten through. And in that, I had decided that one of the patterns that I needed to create for myself is to be someone who speaks up, who voices her thoughts and opinions, and who stands in her true standards and values. When I started doing that, and I started surrounding myself with other women that were already doing that, that is when the pattern became clear. It didn't become clear before that. I couldn't have seen it clearly. I would have still seen it through my own limited beliefs. And once I started doing this work, it was very obvious to me that I had created the result based on my own behaviors of not speaking up, not standing in my value, not claiming for myself what was mine. So, if that kind of gives you an idea of how these patterns play out, what their limitations can look like, and the stories and narratives we create around them. For me, it was being in a male dominated environment and feeling that I was being not, I mean, persecuted is kind of a strong word, but I was being diminished. What I didn't realize is that I had been diminishing myself by not claiming my own authority. So once I started doing this work, that pattern revealed itself. One thing about this is that you cannot go back in the past and replay scenarios and see it clearly. You will always see it through the narrative and the feelings and the emotions that you have attached to that scenario. You cannot see it clearly by digging. You can only see it clearly by moving forward from it. So, what can you do then? Well, first, you have to decide who you want to be. And that doesn't mean you don't want to be yourself. You want to be yourself, but you want to be a, I don't even like the word better version of yourself, a higher potential of who you are. What characteristics do you need to develop to do that? So for me, it was someone that speaks up, speaks her thoughts, speaks her mind, and stands in her value. That's what I wanted for myself. I wanted to be a person. And that was, again, attached to the idea that I saw myself as someone who would help other women get through what I've been through. So all of those characteristics were attached and are attached to the idea of who I'm becoming. So when you get clear on that, that's what you have to consistently show up in as often as possible. That's when the past will become clear to you. So what you do is you plant the seed of this idea of yourself. Who do you see yourself as becoming? What characteristics does that individual need to have? What skill set? So for me, the skill set is speaking. And that's an ongoing skill set that I'm constantly building. Communication, being articulate. And so you have to develop those skills that are attached to that self-concept. And you have to start doing it consistently. If you do not do it consistently, then you cannot show your subconscious mind a new self-concept. So your self-concept is held and stored within the subconscious. The subconscious is what triggers and activates the unconscious to behave in a particular way, which gives you the results that you get. And that's when your conscious mind decides whether it likes or does not like something. And I will show you a diagram of how all of that plays in together. So just to simplify this so that it doesn't seem overly complex, decide the self-concept that you want to develop. Figure out what characteristics that person, that identity needs to carry. Then what behaviors are attached to that? How would you behave if you were already, let's say, competent? If you were a competent person, what kind of things would you do? How would you show up? When you start acting on those things on a consistent daily basis, what happens is you're retraining your unconscious patterns. The past will reveal itself because it has to make room for the new self-concept. There is no self-loathing in this or hating on who you are right now. That will create resistance. What you're always doing is working on becoming a higher potential of yourself. And that is what the self-actualization process will do for you. So as I share this diagram, I will also show you the movement and how it works together so that you have a better foundation of how your mind works. So the more information you have, the more you understand how your mind works, the easier it is to navigate that. It doesn't mean this process is easy because you have to be consistent and your conscious mind is not that powerful. Unfortunately, we have to use our conscious mind in order to make choices. That's what we have to do in order to retrain our unconscious. And then our subconscious can allow and permit the new self-concept and the new patterns to be rooted. But until we have to go in a backwards order in order to reprogram, to retrain. I like retrain better. Just because really the unconscious it's a training. It's been trained from the very beginning. All right, so here is the demo. And as you can see, the unconscious is on the innermost side of the triangle. Subconscious is the lower part, and the conscious is the outermost part. So the conscious is where we're most aware of our thoughts. Our unconscious is, it plays a part of being the in between. It's our responses and our behaviors. And then the subconscious is, it is the root of everything. It's where our self-concept and our self-image is kept. It's where our memories are kept. It's where our storage of everything that we know, that we've seen, that we've experienced, it's all kept there. And so our job is to take our conscious mind and teach our unconscious to behave differently so that our subconscious can accept a new story, a new self-image, a new self-concept, and new experiences. So right now, the way that your mind is working, and most of our minds are working, is from the subconscious. It triggers the unconscious, which then goes to the conscious. The problem with that is that the subconscious only knows what has been safe and reliable based on past experiences, meaning that we're all showing up as our past selves. We're not showing up as the person we want to be. We're showing up as the person we have been. So, because the conscious mind is not the strongest part, it can take a lot of work. So, what happens is you really have to create a plan. You have to be clear and choose. The conscious mind has the ability and the power to choose, but it typically doesn't. It typically just relies on whatever has been. But there is a PowerPoint in the conscious. PowerPoint. um, the power in the conscious is that it has the ability to discern and decide. Once it does that, it begins to retrain the unconscious by consistency and also by observation. So when you are retraining the unconscious, you have to constantly reiterate why you're doing it, and you have to celebrate each time you follow through and you even make progress, because the subconscious relies heavily on emotion. So if it's dry and uncaring, so let's say you show up confidently and you don't even recognize that you did that, then the subconscious, it logs it somewhere, but it's stored with all the other stuff. But when you celebrate how it made you feel, the subconscious will start to store that, and it will feel that it's safe to replay that more naturally, so that the conscious mind will no longer have to do the work, and it'll be very natural for you to show up the way you've been training yourself to show up. Let's see. So let's just say you're someone that doesn't think you're a very confident person. But the truth is, there's probably been many times in your life you showed up confidently. You just didn't witness it. You didn't store it and you didn't log it. And so it did not become a part of your natural program. Whereas someone else that does see themselves as confident, they have observed themselves being confident, and they've logged and stored that to be natural for themselves. So there's no difference between an unconfident person and a confident person except the awareness to it. And so when you don't have a natural awareness to it, you have to create it in order for the beliefs about your self-concept to change. Now I'm going to show you the next diagram. Let's see. Okay, so now this is what we want. to do is we want to take the conscious to the unconscious to the subconscious. And then the subconscious will begin to also initiate to the conscious. So right now, you're going in the opposite direction. You're going from the subconscious to the unconscious to the conscious. This is just the typical way that all of us have operated because a lot of us just haven't had the awareness and the information to know that we even have the ability to change this. So when you're young, it is your subconscious that is forming your identity. It's storing and logging information based on survival, on what's getting your needs met. And then that triggers the unconscious to behave consistently in a certain way in order to get those needs met. Then your conscious mind decides, oh, I like this, or oh, I don't like this. And then it'll trigger back into the subconscious. And then the subconscious will feed back the loop. So now you're older, you can make your own choices, and you don't have to be a product of your. You can choose. We have so much information available to us that you have the plethora of anything available to you in order to surround yourself with the information of what you want. Whereas when you're a little kid, you're only allowed to really know and see what's in your environment. And that's what our caregivers do to keep us safe, is they don't expose us to the big wide world. It would be a lot to take in. So you only know what's in your general environment. And that's what your self-concept is developed from. It's from the projections and the reflections of those in our environment. So now you can expand that. You can develop any part of yourself you want to, but you do have to put in the work, and it does take time because the subconscious is going to feel resistance based on not feeling safe. And that's why consistency is so important. You have to be consistent with it so that the subconscious will decide that it's safe enough to continue to do it and that it will get your needs met and that it'll still keep you alive. That's the subconscious job, is to make sure that it tells the unconscious what to do to keep you alive. So that is the diagram. I hope that kind of gave you an idea of what this retraining looks like. I truly don't know that my diagram is scientifically proven or anything, but this is what I've come to understand through this retraining process, through self-actualization, is that this is the construction of how the mind has been operating and how it actually can operate in order to create change. So thank you for joining me today, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.